Good morning and welcome to Quimper Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. While our physical sanctuary can be found in Port Townsend, Washington, our love knows no boundaries, and we are so glad to now be made up of people far and wide. Today is our Memorial Weekend service. As is our tradition, we will take some time in today's service to remember those QUF members who have died in the past year. We'll also hear a special sermon by Victoria Poling, whose dad, Mitch Poling, was among them. And although there will be a certain solemnity in our service, there will also be joy, gratitude, and love, for we are the rememberers of these great people. And Victoria will tell us more about that in her sermon. But first, let us begin this day with a breathing practice by Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh. Breathing in, I go back to the island within myself. There are beautiful trees within the island. There are cool streams of water. There are birds, sunshine, and fresh air. Breathing out, I feel safe. So with these images in mind, let us now take a few deep breaths together. We are so glad you are with us today. Bertram, will you please lead us now in our call to community?
Please join me in singing Filled with Loving Kindness.
And now I'd like to invite you to join me in reading our chalice lighting words. In honor of those we have known and loved in the past, and in recognition of the gifts and sacrifices they made on our behalf, we lift up our thanks and light our chalices. Thank you, Bertram. Our opening words come from Tim Haley, QUF's first called minister. Amid all the noise in our lives, we take this moment to sit in silence, to give thanks for another day, to give thanks for all those in our lives who have brought us warmth and love. We give thanks for the gift of life, for we know we are on our pilgrimage here, but for a brief moment in time. Let us open ourselves here, now, to the process of becoming more whole, of living more fully, of giving and forgiving more freely, of understanding more completely the meaning of our lives here on earth. I invite you now to join voices for our opening song, Spirit of Life.
Please join me in singing Spirit of Life. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. In the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Good morning. I'm Nils Peterson, President of the Board of Trustees of Quimper Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, with a few announcements from the board. First, our ALPS committee would like to pass on the following. The QUF Adult Learning Programs, or ALPS, are a defining part of our community. But like with so many aspects of our fellowship, this year presents a special challenge. We don't know if in-person events this fall will be possible, but our ALPS committee is nonetheless working toward a full set of offerings. Naturally, this requires new thinking given the pandemic, and ALPS invites your creative thinking. Do you have an idea for a course or event that you'd like to offer, perhaps in a novel way through ALPS? We have the ability to offer courses via Zoom, and ALPS will provide support to presenters and participants. But we're also open to other means and other platforms. If there's a course or event that you'd like to do and need advice or help in implementing it, given likely restrictions on meetings, then ALPS would like to hear from you. Please contact Paul LeBert, whose contact info can be found in your directory or in the Friday update. Next, I'd like to turn to, unfortunately, a problem that seems to keep popping up, which are these gift card scams. A number of our members have been victims recently of an email scam involving gift cards. These emails are getting more and more sophisticated. Typically, they look like they come from our minister, Kate Lohr, or from me, and the sending address may in fact look legitimate. If you reply, they then ask you to buy gift cards and then send them the codes. Aside, first, from saying that none of the staff, the board, or anyone else affiliated with the fellowship will ask you to do anything like this, please also check the sending email address and make sure that it matches the official address, because usually it doesn't if you actually check. If you still think for some reason that it might be legitimate, pick up the phone and call Kate or me or whoever it is that purportedly sent you this email to double check before doing anything. Lastly, know that if we ask you for a financial contribution, it will always go through QUF accounts. That is, be deposited into our bank first and then distributed so that there's a clear record. We will not ask for direct contributions to third parties. Lastly, I'd like to address our budget situation for this coming fiscal year. On Friday, we published the proposed budget for the next fiscal year. This budget is the result of a lot of work and many long meetings and difficult decisions with and between the Personnel and Finance Committees, the Pledge Campaign Team, Reverend Kate and our Administrator Robin, and the Board of Trustees. When we started this process last fall, we were hopeful that with the calling of our new minister and our moving forward from the interim ministry process, we could start to build again toward a staffing level appropriate for a congregation of 400 to 600 members and friends. But the reality of COVID-19 has hit us in several ways. First, financially. Pledges for this coming fiscal year are about $100,000 less than we had hoped. Pledge fulfillment for the current year is lagging. Simply, our members and friends have been hit hard and are less financially secure. Our Paycheck Protection Plan forgivable loan is allowing us to keep paying our staff through the end of this fiscal year, but is something we can only count on once. Second, we can't meet in and use the fellowship buildings, and this fact may continue for some time. The UUA suggests that we plan for virtual operations through May of next year, but we don't really know how long this is going to go on at this point. While we hope for the best, we're forced to plan for virtual operation, requiring a different way of operating, different skill sets, and greater reliance on technology. The result is that we're eliminating the positions of our music director, Bertram Gulhaugen, our membership coordinator, Abby Kreka, our office manager, Patty Miles, and our coffee hour host, Nancheska Schroff, and adding a new position that will be directed toward technical support and expertise. Obviously, this is not where we want it to be. It's hard for our staff. It's very sad for us. But we're forced to accept the reality of our situation. Immediately after the service, there will be a finance question and answer period at which both our treasurer, Penny Ritterbusch, and myself will be available to discuss the situation. The link should be with your invitation to the service. Thank you.
Good morning. Today we are recognizing Memorial Day and talking about those losses and memories of loved ones who have passed away this last year. I have been building a whole section in our library at QUF of picture books on death and loss and dying, because I know that death and loss are frequently things that we don't talk about well. We don't know how to talk to our friends. We don't know how to talk to our families about those impacts on our lives of loss and sadness. So I wanted to share this story with you, Lifetimes. It's one of my favorite books talking about the cycle of life and the hardness of loss, as well as the connection with all living things as we all go through the beginnings, the middles, and the ends of our lives. So this is Lifetimes by Brian Melanie and Robert Ingpen. There is a beginning and an ending for everything that is alive, and in between is living. All around us, everywhere, beginnings and endings are going on all the time, with living in between. And this is true for all living things, for people, for plants, for birds, for fish, for trees, for animals. Even the tiniest insects. Nothing that is alive goes on forever. And how long it lives depends on what it is and what happens in its lifetime. Sometimes living things become ill or they get hurt. Mostly, of course, they get better again. But there are times when they are so badly hurt or they are so ill that they die because they can no longer stay alive. This can happen when they are young or old or anywhere in between. This is sad. And it is the way of all things. And it is true for everything that is alive. For people, for plants, for birds, for fish, for trees, for animals. Even for the tiniest insects. And now there are lots of living things in the world, and each one has its own special lifetime. Trees that are tall and strong grow slowly, standing in the sunshine and the rain. And some of them live for a very long time, as long as many hundreds of years or more. This is their lifetime. Rabbits and mice grow up in only a few weeks, and they go on to live for a year or two, crunching up carrots and nibbling on cheese until they grow old and very tired, and it is their time to die. This is how it happens to be for rabbits and mice. It is the way they live, and it is their lifetime. Flowers and vegetables, planted as seeds in the beginning of spring when the earth is warm, grow quickly to live through the heat of the summer. And the days pass and they become old during autumn when it is cooler. Then, when winter comes and it is cold, they die. It is the way they live, and it is their lifetime. Butterflies live as butterflies for only a few weeks. Once they have dried their wings, they flutter and flit from leaf to flower. At first they are bright and quick, but as the time passes, they begin to slow down until finally they can go no further. They rest a while, and then they die. That is the way butterflies live, and that is their lifetime. Birds grow quite quickly too. It is often no more than a few months from the times they hatch until they are strong enough to fly and feed themselves. How long they live after that seems to depend on their size. Mostly, the bigger they are, the longer they will be alive. That is the way birds live. Some for as long as 50 years or more, and others no more than 2 or 3. But however long, it is their lifetime for each one. Fish swimming in lakes and rivers or in the sea can be so tiny it is hard to tell that they are there at all, or so big that the only way you can describe it is enormous. And again, as far as we know, it seems that the smaller they are, the shorter will be their lifetime. But that is how it is for fish. Their lives can be as little as a day or so, or as long as 80 or 90 years. It is the way they live, and those are their lifetimes. And people? Well, like everything else that is alive, people have lifetimes too. They live for 80 or 90 years, sometimes even longer, doing all the things that people like to do, like growing up and being grown up. It can happen, though, just as it does with all other living things, that people become ill or they get hurt. Mostly, of course, they get better again, like when you get a splinter. But there are times when they are so badly hurt or so very ill that they die. It is sad. And it is how it is for people. It is the way they live, and it is their lifetime. So no matter how long they are or how short, lifetimes are really all the same. They have beginnings and endings, and there is living in between. I am so lucky to live this in-between with you. I know sometimes life can be uneasy and sad, but know that I am here for you and we are here for you, because what makes life so special is the time we spend together in this in-between. Thank you for sharing your lifetime with me.
Welcome, especially for those of you who are visiting us this morning. You are invited to say hello in the comments section of the video and tell us your name and where you're from. We'd love to hear from you. We are so glad you are joining us together for this beautiful celebration and service.
It is now time for our offering. We at QUF aspire to be a generous congregation, so 3 times a month we share our plate with a local organization that shares our values. Today, we are sharing our plate with The Recyclery, which is a nonprofit, full-service bike shop serving Jefferson County and the Olympic Peninsula. They specialize in refurbished bikes, trying always to divert all materials from the landfill. Their mission? To promote bicycle use for a healthier, more sustainable community. You can donate to the Recyclery by texting the number showing on your screen now, going to our website and clicking on Giving, or simply sending us a check. We will now gratefully receive your offering. Memorial Day weekend is a time when we remember the women and men who are currently serving in the armed forces, and we pray for their safe return. We also acknowledge those who will never return, and we solemnly acknowledge their sacrifice. May our leaders find the wisdom and courage to work for lasting peace. On this day, we also remember those QUF members and friends whom we have loved and lost in the past year. I will read their names shortly. And as the names are read, I invite you to hold their names and faces in your mind's eye. We can recall the gifts they have given us, the depth of their love, the courage of their dying, and the fullness of their living. Let us begin. Mitch Poling, who died on July 6th, 2019. Sharon Salisbury, who died on August 8th, 2019. Lavon Snell, who died on September 4th, 2019. Julie Duke, who died on November 8th, 2019. Warren Shelley Rose, who died on December 29th, 2019. Kathy Francis, who died on January 13th of this year. Linda Gerard, who died on February 29th of this year. And John Bowles, who died on March 29th of this year. In the holy quiet of this hour, their names surround us and live within us in blessed memory, and we give thanks. Amen. It is now time to share the joys and sorrows of this congregation. We begin, though, by recognizing that our personal joys and sorrows are only a fragment of the joys and sorrows of the larger community of life. Thus, we place a stone for the wider world, thinking in particular of all the people in other countries who are experiencing a surge in COVID-19, but lack the PPEs and test kits required to flatten the curve. May we work for a world in which medical care is seen as a human right for all. And now, within the congregation, we light this first candle, a candle of sorrow, for former member Beth Lorber, who succumbed last week to cancer. She had had breast cancer 20 years ago and ended up with many cancer-free years, but was re-diagnosed about a year ago. It had metastasized through her whole body by then, and she was just 61 years old. We hold her and her husband, Peter Bunyan, and all their friends and family, including you, in our hearts during this time of loss. We light a candle of healing for member Judy Tuff, who suffered a small stroke last Friday and required a short hospitalization. I spoke with her recently, and she is undergoing physical therapy and taking medication, and she is slowly improving, but her right hand and part of her right arm are still affected, and she reports having a difficult time writing. Judy, we love you and hope you continue to make progress. Please call if there's anything we can do to be of help. We light a candle of healing for Barry Tweed, father of Sandy Tweed and grandfather of Christina Tweed. Barry fell earlier this week and broke his hip, requiring a partial hip replacement down at Portland's Legacy Hospital. Recovery from such a procedure can be long and daunting, so we send our best hopes and prayers for patience, good care, and a thorough healing process. We now light a candle of healing for C.B. Ross, the mother of member Connie Ross. C.B. also fell and broke her hip. She had surgery on Tuesday and is now in rehab. This has been a hard time for Connie. This has been a hard year with the loss of John and now her mother being in Portland and Connie not being able to visit her. So we hold you in our hearts, Connie, and also pray for a rapid healing of your mother. I'd now like to light a candle of sorrow for the QUF staff persons who just received word that they are being laid off. We know this news was difficult to receive and presents a new and additional hardship in your lives. Please know that it was economic uncertainty and not your performance that drove this decision. We love you, appreciate you, and still consider you to be an important part of this community. Please know we are carrying you in our hearts right now because we care about you. And for those remaining staff people, we understand that as of July 1st, your workload will become much heavier. This, too, is a hardship and will require extra patience and care on all of our parts. And so we light a candle of care and resilience for you today. And now for a much needed joy. We light a candle for the birth of the very first grandchild of Dawn Darrington. This little girl's name is Elizabeth Dawn Baldwin. She was born on Wednesday night, weighing 7 pounds, 14 ounces. Dawn reports that both mother and baby are doing well, and she hopes to visit them in Arizona as soon as possible. Congratulations, Dawn. And now we place a final stone, holding in our hearts the joys and sorrows and names that I've just shared, but also thinking of the joys, sorrows, and remembrances among us that are not expressed today, but are of no less importance. I invite you now to join me in a moment of silence, which will be followed by a musical response. Our reading today is entitled We Are of a Tribe, and it's by Alberto Rios. This poem was originally shared with me by Lavon Snell, one of the people we've lost this year. We plant seeds in the ground and dreams in the sky, hoping that someday the roots of one will meet the upstretched limbs of the other. It has not happened yet. We share the sky, all of us, the whole world. Together, we are a tribe of eyes that look upward, even as we stand on uncertain ground. The earth beneath us moves quiet and wild, its boundaries shifting, its muscles wavering. The dream of sky is indifferent to all of this, impervious to borders, fences, reservations. The sky is our common home, the place we all live. We are in the world together. The dream of sky requires no passport. Blue will not be fenced. Blue will not be a crime. So look up, stay a while, let your breathing slow. Know that you always have a home here.
My life flows on in endless song above earth's lamentation. I hear the real, though far off hymn that hails a new creation. Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ringing. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? What though the tempest round me roars? I know the truth, it liveth. What though the darkness round me close? Songs in the night it giveth. No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging, since love prevails in heaven and earth. How can I keep from singing? When tyrants tremble as they hear the bells of freedom ringing, when friends rejoice both far and near, how can I keep from singing? To prison cell and dungeon vile, our thoughts to them are winging. When friends by shame are undefiled, how can I keep from singing?
Good morning. I'm so honored to join you on Memorial Day, a day when we remember those who have gone before us, those who we love personally, and those who have cared for us civically as Americans. This is a special day when we consciously bring to mind that we are interdependent within a web of life that extends backwards in time and history to include our lineage and our ancestries. We remember family and friends, colleagues, and relationships with dear ones whose presence in our lives may even defy naming of the relationship. And we have mixed memories of those whose presence in our lives may have been difficult or even painful. Even so, we are shaped. We are held up by one another, like bulkelp, floating on the ebbing and flooding tide, stipe extending down through the waters with our hold fast attached tightly to a rock on the seafloor. We are the stones to whom others hold fast. When someone passes away, it is up to us as the rememberers to pick up the threads of their story and attach them to the larger story of which we are a part. On Memorial Day, I invite us to recognize that as Unitarian Universalists, we have an important story to tell about freedom, an inner freedom that comes from practices, attitudes, and beliefs and actions that reconnect us again and again to the web of all life. I'd like to start with a story about where I am today, finding my own sense of freedom in this time. And as many of you may know, for me this year, I am remembering the passing of my father, Mitch Poling, who was a member of this congregation. And many of you knew him and loved him as well. Nearly a year later, I continue to miss him terribly. I feel a yearning to remember the joys more than the sorrows, even as those sorrows are a surprising upwelling from the deep, breaking into the current of my day. Perhaps you have had sorrows like this one. And I have been surprised to realize that as much as I want to remember my father, I also have this tender and vulnerable longing to be remembered by him, wherever, however he is now. I also find myself thinking about his legacy, asking myself what I will continue as his daughter, honoring his life with my own vocation and in and through my own relationships. I experience a sense of destiny shaped by having been raised by this man. And paradoxically, my sense of freedom comes from recognizing myself as creating a continuity with his life, rather than a rupture or a separation, as our culture so often encourages us to do, to separate ourselves from our families. Those of you who have parents and guardians and caregivers who have passed, I wonder if you have felt this way. Have you looked perhaps to the sky on impulse, sending up your small prayer requests? Or as poet Alberto Rios put it so beautifully in our reading earlier, planting your dream in the sky, to be seen and recognized again by the ancestors of your lineage. I feel extraordinarily grateful that my wish for some two-way communication has been granted on several occasions. Even though my father is no longer with us in body, I've been astonished and delighted that he has occasionally made some appearances in my dreams. And so I'd like to share one of these dream seeds that is literally planted in the sky. In the dream, I am standing next to my father. We are somewhere out in the cosmos, looking at stars and galaxies. I have the sense that his consciousness is now traveling, kayaking perhaps, on Milky Ways. I ask him, "Dad, what's your favorite place in the universe?" The dream zooms in to this gorgeous, milky, blue-white swirl, and I realize he's showing me galaxies being born. Around us, it is dark. Astronomers say that 95% of the universe is made of dark matter plus dark energy, which really means we don't know what it is. So I ask my dad, "What about dark matter?" And he chuckles and says, "Oh, it's alive. It's not nothing at all." So now when I look to the night sky, at all the darkness between the stars, I think of my father and that curious, delighted light in his eyes and that chuckle as he explains with great joy that the darkness is alive, that it is a fertile body giving birth to the web of all life. I gift you this image as my way of continuing his legacy of curiosity about the mystery of life. I am also curious about your web of affection and those who you love and remember, with joys and with sorrows. Whoever they were, and however complicated your relationship may have been, they live on and through your body's memories. And the legacy you create with your life both continues and transforms the legacies and, yes, also the traumas that they have left. I would like to invite you, as you feel moved, to call in those ancestors and light up your screen with some text. So please, as able, please join me in typing in the names of those who you remember today in the chat as you are watching. Let us make this circle wider still. When I think about the wider circle of those who have touched my life, I remember a time many years ago when I came across a framed quote at a friend's house. Her family is Lutheran, and they were quite involved in their church. The quote was, "When I count my blessings, I count you." While I didn't resonate so much with that language then, now I find myself appreciating it. What a beautiful spiritual practice, to take time to list, to enumerate, and to count all those who we are grateful for. It's an invitation to praise the beauty of who is here and hold that alongside sorrow. This year, as I have received generous support from my internship committee and from our minister, Reverend Kate, I have been reminded to count you, QUUF, among my very many blessings. Thank you. I know it's hard right now not to be able to see one another in person, and I am so pleased to see the ways that we are adapting, setting intentions to gather and to reach out, doing what we can given our limits. A chaplain once said to me that the hallmark of adult learning and adaptation is actually about loss. To learn something new once we're adults involves giving up something we thought we knew or believed before. It involves relinquishing old ways and being open to changing our minds to take new perspectives. And this time of quarantine, the holiday today, is also a time to memorialize life the way it was as we grapple with new ways of connecting, asking for help, asking for contact with those from whom we're apart, and also asking for space from those who we live with and are now perhaps spending more time with than ever before. This is okay. You're allowed. Most of all, this time asks us to remember patience and self-compassion for our limits. And this is a time to tell stories. As I mentioned before, Unitarian Universalists are the rememberers of an important story, a powerful alternative story to the one that undergirds the reason for the Memorial Day holiday, the story of war. I have been feeling concerned about the language of war being used to tell the story of our response to COVID-19. There is this cultural idea in mainline, middle-class, white America that freedom is the opposite of war. To be free and to have rights means fighting an enemy. George Orwell suggests in his novel 1984 that the enemy is always vague, elsewhere at the edge, in order to maintain an empire. Sort of like, for many of us, the war on Afghanistan has been. So now we have a narrative saying that there is a war within our national boundaries, and one that transcends national boundaries. The virus disrupts nationalism, even as the stories told about it may perpetuate and re-inscribe nationalistic narratives. So I suggest that we are in a time when, as UUs, we can choose to remember the freedoms that are inherent to the human person, that are not dependent on fighting an enemy. We can remember the freedoms like worth and dignity. Let us tell this story. Let me say that again. We are in a time of choice. We are in a time of choosing to remember. We can choose to remember that we have inherent freedoms which include dignity, worth, and respect for the interdependent web of all life. Another word for that is mutuality. As a liberal religious people, our freedoms include a responsible search for truth and meaning. Let us tell a free and responsible alternative story to war. Let us tell a story of choice. We can choose to go on a journey and discover something new. In this time, we are especially free to hear one another into speech, to hear each other's hopes and griefs and dreams. Let us exercise our freedoms on Memorial Day and every day, the freedom to give loving attention and presence to one another, to be the person who someone calls for support, to be the person who calls out for help, to be the person who studies the information carefully and chooses our words. Let us exercise our freedom to make new friends with the garden, the trees, our furniture, and the kitchen sink, or also with our paints and pens and our cameras and whatever ways we use to express ourselves in art, to become creative. Let us exercise our freedom to enter into deeper dialogues with the dreams and desires revealed within us by the creative limitations of staying home or the increased pressures of being essential workers. To remember the relationship that we have with all our relations, let's take this time to recommit ourselves to siding with love or the Poor People's Campaign, immigration rights, reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, wherever your conscience draws you into deeper relation. Let us exercise our freedom to invite hope. Not that things will return to normal, but that our life dreams will change and become richer and deepen. And I love this phrase by Florida Maxwell, to become fierce with reality. There is nothing like creative limitations of movement and space to remember what we hold to be most ultimate and most intimately valuable in our lives. My invitation to you on this Memorial Day Sunday is to let the dream of your life be moved, to get a little looser, to tell your losses to one another, to your teddy bear, to the tree outside your window. Talk out loud to your departed loved ones. Be angry with them if you need to. Talk to your children and grandchildren, talk to the sky, and I invite you, if you are able, even to lay down on your belly in the grass and whisper it to the ground, and to get up speaking your joys and your praise, because those joys and those sorrows go hand in hand. And if you would, I invite you to dance your joys and your sorrows in your living room. Put on your favorite shirt or your favorite dress. Play those favorite old songs to call down the memories, call down the ancestors and the connections to times before. Remember that all those who survived to make us who we are continue to be with us still. We are their rememberers. And we are adding our stone to that sea floor full of cobbles. We are holding fast. Lament, gratitude, and praise are how we practice our freedom as a religious people. This is inner freedom. Friends, let us get wild in our laments and wild in our praise. get creaturely in our gratitude, open our hearts wide to the cosmos, daring the dark matter to give birth to a more beautiful presence of freedom within each one of us. Let us cultivate a space in our hearts of joyful play that paradoxically comes from sorrow and limits and strange changes. This is our freedom. This is our peace. And if this wild joy eludes you, be comforted to remember that joy is not excitement, it is knowing that you have a place. We all have a place here in this peace. You have a place, both in sickness and in health. You have a place in your community, in person and online. You have a place in the world of people who practice respectful dialogue with one another and with other than human beings. You have an ecological niche in the cosmic web of all life. And as poet Alberto Rios said in our reading, you have a place in the sky, our common home where we all live, and blue will not be fenced. Let this place of home be a comfort and peace to return to, where love will always find you, where you can let yourself be found by a love that will never let you go. Let us remember this. May it be so.
Please join me in singing Thanks Be for These. These lyrics will be sung to the tune of Though I May Speak with Bravest Fire. Thanks be for these life's holy times, moments of grief, days of delight, triumph and failure intertwine, shaping our vision of the right. Thanks be for these, for birth and death, life in between with meaning full, holy becomes the quickened breath. We celebrate life's interval. Thanks be for these, ennobling art, images welcome to our sight, music caressing ear and heart, inviting us to loftier height. Thanks be for these, we celebrate, sing and rejoice, our trust declare, press all our faith into our fate. Bless now the destiny we share.
And now it is time to extinguish our flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment, or the power of transformation. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Our benediction was written by L.R. Nost. Do not be dismayed by the brokenness of the world. all things break, and all things can be mended, not with time, as they say, but with intention. So go, love intentionally, extravagantly, unconditionally. The broken world waits in the darkness of the light that is you. And now, we're just about ready to head into our virtual coffee hour. We sent out the link to the coffee hour in our Friday update and in our service reminder this morning. It will also be posted in the chat box to your right. Once you connect, you'll be placed in a room with 8 to 10 people, friends, new and old. I hope to see you there after the postlude, which will be sung by Linda Bach.
When you walk through a storm,